Most people don't quit a job. They escape it. That's what the security guard muttered under his breath on a gray Monday morning, watching another driver walk out through the glass doors without looking back. 3 drivers in 10 days. No notice. No complaints filed. Just gone. The kind of pattern that doesn't need explanation if you've been around long enough. Charlotte Whitmore didn't keep drivers. She broke them. The building itself seemed to know it. The way the marble floors echoed sharper when her heels crossed the lobby. The way conversations dimmed just a fraction when her name appeared on someone's phone. She was precise, controlled, and relentlessly efficient. Meetings started on the minute. Cars arrived early or not at all. And inside that black sedan, where most spent their final hours before quitting, silence wasn't peaceful. It was pressure. The kind that pressed against your chest until you said something just to breathe. Most drivers did. They tried small talk. They tried humor. They tried to read her mood through the rearview mirror like it was a test they hadn't studied for. They didn't last long. Then Elias Carter showed up. No announcement. No introduction beyond a simple name on a clipboard. He stepped out of a worn gray sedan across the street, adjusted the sleeve of a jacket that had seen better winters, and walked in with a pace that didn't rush but didn't hesitate either. In his hand was a paper cup of black coffee. No lid. Steam curling upward into the cold air like it had somewhere to be. He didn't look around much. Didn't try to measure the building or the people inside it. He just signed his name where they pointed, nodded once, and said, "I'll be on time." Not confident. Not defensive. Just certain. By 7 a.m., he was behind the wheel of Charlotte's car. The engine hummed low, steady, like it understood its role better than most people did. The city outside was already moving. Horns in the distance. Footsteps quick on sidewalks, the hum of a Monday that didn't wait for anyone. Charlotte entered without greeting. The door closed with a soft, final click. "Midtown," she said, eyes already on her phone. That was it. No good. Morning. No acknowledgement. Elias nodded once, though she wasn't looking, and pulled into traffic without a word. The first mile passed in complete silence. Not the kind people fill out of habit. The kind that stays. Heavy, but not uncomfortable. Just present. He didn't check the mirror. Didn't adjust the radio. Didn't ask about the route. He simply drove. At exactly 7:42 a.m., Elias eased off the accelerator. The car slowed. Not abruptly, not enough to draw attention from the outside, but enough to be felt. Charlotte's eyes lifted for the first time. Not annoyed. Just aware. The car came to a brief stop along a quiet stretch of curb no one usually noticed. No landmarks. No reason. Just a place between places. She didn't speak. Neither did he. 3 seconds. Maybe 4. Then he pressed the gas again and merged back into traffic like nothing had happened. Charlotte glanced at the time on her phone, then back at the road ahead. A small crease formed between her brows. Not anger. Not yet. Something else. Something closer to curiosity. Most drivers tried to impress her. This one didn't seem interested in being seen at all. And somehow, that made him harder to ignore. By the 3rd day, the pattern had already started to break. Not in a loud way. Not in a way anyone could point to and name. Just small things. Subtle shifts that most people would miss if they were not looking for them. Charlotte Whitmore noticed everything. The car was always exactly 2 minutes early. Not 1 minute. Not 3. 2. The temperature inside never needed adjusting. 72 degrees. Steady, no matter what the weather outside decided to do. The route was efficient but never aggressive. No sudden turns. No unnecessary braking. Just a quiet, deliberate flow through the city like the road opened for him on its own. Elias Carter did not try to impress her. That was the first thing that stood out. He did not ask if she preferred a different station. He did not offer bottled water like the others had. He did not fill the silence with polite questions about her schedule or her meetings or her day. He left the silence untouched, like it belonged there. And somehow, that made it heavier. More noticeable. On Wednesday morning, she tested him. Not directly. Charlotte Whitmore did not test people in obvious ways. She shifted her schedule 10 minutes earlier without notice. A small disruption. Enough to catch most drivers off guard. Enough to force an apology, a rushed arrival, a broken rhythm. But at 6:50 a.m., the car was already waiting. Engine running. Lights on. Elias stood outside the driver's door, coffee in hand, as if the change had never happened. He opened the door for her with the same quiet precision. No mention of the time. No acknowledgement of the adjustment. He simply did his job. She sat down, slower this time. Watching. Not through the mirror. Through the absence of it. He still did not look back. Midtown again, she said, her tone neutral. He nodded once and pulled away from the curb. At 7:42 a.m., the car slowed again. Same street. Same quiet stretch. Same unexplained pause. This time, Charlotte did not look at her phone. She looked outside. There was nothing remarkable about the place. A row of small brick buildings. A narrow sidewalk. A crossing sign that flickered between red and white. No traffic light. No construction. No visible reason to stop. Her fingers tapped once against her knee. Not impatience. Calculation. 3 seconds. 4. Then the car moved again. Later that afternoon, she brought it up without looking at him. You stopped again this morning, she said, her voice calm but precise. Elias did not answer right away. His hands stayed steady on the wheel. Eyes forward. Yes, ma'am, he said finally. No explanation. No excuse. Just acknowledgement. Charlotte's gaze lingered on the back of his head for a moment longer than necessary. Most people would have filled that silence. Offered a reason. A justification. Something to make themselves easier to understand. He did not. And that made her uneasy in a way she did not recognize. Not because he did something wrong, but because he did not seem interested in being right. By Thursday, the office had started talking again. Not loudly. Not openly. But enough. The new driver is still here, someone whispered near the elevators. Give it time, another replied. They all last a few days. Charlotte heard it without reacting. She always did. But that evening, as she stepped into the car, she hesitated for the first time. Just a fraction. Just enough to notice. Elias was already in position. Engine running. Hands steady. Presence quiet. She closed the door and sat back, her eyes drifting briefly to the clock on the dashboard. 7:41 p.m. Almost exact. Almost. And for reasons she could not yet explain, she found herself waiting for the next minute. Friday morning came with a thin layer of fog hanging low over the streets, softening the sharp edges of the city into something quieter, almost reflective. Elias Carter was already there, as always, 2 minutes early, engine running, coffee resting in the holder beside him, untouched for now. The dashboard clock shifted from 7:40 to 7:41, and his eyes flicked once to the corner of the street ahead. Not long. Just enough. Charlotte Whitmore stepped out of the building with the same controlled pace, heels striking the pavement in even, measured beats. But there was something different in the way she approached the car. Not slower. Not hesitant. Just aware. She opened the door and sat down without a word, but her phone remained in her hand, screen dark. She did not look at it. Midtown, she said, softer this time, as if the word did not need to travel as far. Elias nodded and pulled into traffic. The city moved around them in its usual rhythm, buses exhaling at stops, crosswalk signals ticking down in quiet urgency, people weaving through intersections with practiced impatience. Inside the car, nothing changed, and yet everything felt slightly more intentional. At 7:42 a.m., the car slowed again. Same street, same narrow stretch of curb. This time, Charlotte turned her head before the car came to a full stop. She watched the sidewalk. A few pedestrians passed without noticing. A man in a blue jacket adjusted his bag. A woman held a paper cup with both hands like it was the only warm thing she had left. And then, from behind the corner of a small brick building, a little girl appeared. No more than 7. Backpack too big for her shoulders, one strap slipping loose as she walked. She stopped near the edge of the sidewalk and looked across the street, scanning the traffic with the kind of careful patience children learn when no one is there to rush them. Charlotte's eyes narrowed slightly. Not suspicion, recognition of a pattern she had not yet named. Elias did not move. His hand stayed on the wheel, his posture unchanged. He did not wave, did not call out. He simply watched. The girl adjusted her backpack, then looked down the street, directly toward the car. For a brief second, her face softened into something close to a smile. Not wide, not obvious, just enough to be real. Elias exhaled slowly, almost imperceptible. The crossing signal shifted. The girl stepped forward, crossed with small, steady steps, and disappeared into the entrance of a school building across the street. Only then did Elias press the accelerator. The car moved forward, merging back into the flow of traffic as if the pause had been part of the route all along. Charlotte did not look away immediately. Her gaze lingered on the sidewalk, now empty again, before she turned back toward the front. She studied the reflection of his face in the faint outline of the windshield. Still calm, still unreadable, but no longer invisible. "Why do you stop there?" she asked, her voice low, not sharp, not demanding, just direct. Elias did not answer right away. The engine hummed beneath them, steady, patient. He adjusted his grip on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Because it matters," he said. The words were simple, too simple. Charlotte waited. He did not add anything. No explanation. No story. Just that. "Because it matters." She leaned back into the seat, her fingers resting still against her knee, her mind turning over the moment like it was something fragile she did not want to drop. Outside, the city returned to its usual noise. Inside, the silence shifted again. Not heavier this time. Just different. Charlotte Whitmore did not ask another question that morning. She did not need to. The answer had not given her anything concrete, nothing she could categorize or measure, and that unsettled her more than any mistake ever had. Because it matters. It was not a reason. It was a decision. And she was not used to people making decisions without explaining them. The rest of the drive passed in silence, but it no longer felt like pressure pressing against the walls of the car. It felt occupied, as if something unseen had taken a seat between them and refused to leave. At the office, she stepped out without hesitation, but her eyes lingered for a fraction longer than usual before the door closed. Elias remained in place, hands still, gaze forward, already returning to the rhythm that had kept him steady long before this job existed. By late afternoon, Charlotte found herself distracted in ways she did not tolerate. Numbers blurred on her screen. Conversations repeated themselves in meetings she usually controlled with precision. At one point, she paused mid-sentence, a rare fracture in her composure, before continuing as if nothing had happened. No one questioned it. No one ever did. But she noticed. That evening, when she entered the car, the city had shifted into a colder tone. Streetlights reflected off wet pavement, and the air carried that quiet weight that comes before a long night. Elias started the engine the moment she closed the door. No delay, no adjustment, just movement. "Downtown," she said, her voice sharper than intended. He nodded once. The drive began. Traffic was slower now, heavier, filled with the kind of impatience that builds at the end of a long day. Horns echoed in short bursts. Tires rolled through shallow puddles, sending ripples across the street. Inside the car, the silence returned, but Charlotte did not retreat into her phone this time. Her eyes stayed forward, tracing the path ahead, then drifting, almost without permission, to the reflection of his hands on the wheel. Steady, unshaken. At 7:42 p.m., the car slowed again. Different time. Same intention. Charlotte felt it before she saw it. That slight easing of motion. That deliberate choice. This time, the street was quieter. A row of dim storefronts. A bus stop with a flickering overhead light. No school. No children. Just the low hum of the city settling into night. Elias brought the car to a brief stop. Charlotte turned, her gaze sharper now, searching for the pattern she had missed. There was nothing obvious. No one waiting. No signal changing. Just a man standing near the edge of the sidewalk. Older, shoulders slightly bent, holding a grocery bag that looked heavier than it should have been. He shifted his weight, adjusting his grip, preparing to step forward into traffic that did not slow for him. Elias waited. Not long. Just enough. The man glanced toward the car, then at the road, then back again. Something in that moment changed. He stepped forward, slower than most, but with more certainty, crossing the street without rushing, without fear of being pushed aside. Charlotte watched the entire exchange without speaking. No words passed between them. No gestures. No acknowledgement. Just presence. Once the man reached the other side, Elias pressed the accelerator again. The car moved forward, smooth, uninterrupted, as if the pause had always been part of the route. Charlotte leaned back slightly, her fingers resting still, her thoughts no longer racing but settling into something deeper. "You do that often," she said quietly. Not a question, an observation. Elias did not look back. "Yes, ma'am," he replied. Same tone, same calm. She exhaled slowly, her gaze returning to the road ahead, but something in her posture had shifted. The space between control and understanding had opened just enough for something new to enter. And for the first time in a long time, Charlotte Whitmore did not feel the need to close it. The weekend passed without interruption, but something had already shifted, quiet and irreversible, like a door that had been left slightly open without anyone noticing when it happened. Monday morning arrived colder than the last, the kind of sharp chill that made the city feel more distant, more mechanical, as if everything moved out of obligation rather than intention. Elias Carter was already there, as always, the engine running low, a thin layer of frost fading from the edges of the windshield. His coffee sat untouched again, steam rising in slow, patient curls. Charlotte Whitmore stepped out of the building with her usual precision, but her eyes did not move past the car this time. They landed on it immediately, as if she had been expecting it before she even reached the door. She entered without speaking. The door closed softly behind her. "Midtown," she said, but the word carried less weight now, less distance. Elias nodded once and pulled into traffic. The city unfolded around them, familiar and unchanged, but Charlotte did not retreat into her phone. Instead, her gaze moved outward, watching the streets with a quiet attention that had not been there before. She noticed things. A delivery driver adjusting his jacket against the wind. A woman tying her child's shoelace near the curb. A man standing too long at a crosswalk, waiting for a gap that never seemed to come. Small moments, usually invisible. At 7:42 a.m., the car slowed again. The same street, the same narrow stretch of curb. But this time, Charlotte did not wait to understand. She was already watching. The little girl appeared again, stepping out from behind the brick building, her backpack still too large for her shoulders, her pace steady but unhurried. She paused at the edge of the sidewalk, looking both ways, her movements careful in a way that spoke of routine, not fear. Elias did not move. Charlotte did not speak. The moment unfolded exactly as it had before. The girl glanced toward the car, her face softening into that same quiet recognition. Not surprise, not curiosity, just familiarity. She adjusted her strap, crossed the street with measured steps, and disappeared into the school entrance. Elias exhaled slowly. The car moved forward. Charlotte leaned back, her fingers resting lightly against her lap, her thoughts settling into something clearer now. She had seen it twice. That was enough. "That is your daughter," she said, her voice calm, not questioning, not probing, just stating what had already formed in her mind. Elias did not respond immediately. His hands remained steady on the wheel, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Yes, ma'am," he said after a moment. Nothing more. No elaboration. No correction. Just confirmation. Charlotte nodded once, almost to herself. She looked out the window again, but this time, the city did not feel as distant. It felt connected. Later that day, the thought stayed with her. Not as a distraction, but as something quieter. Something that returned between meetings, between emails, between the constant flow of decisions that defined her world. She found herself watching people differently. Not analyzing, not evaluating, just noticing. That evening, when she entered the car, she did not give an immediate destination. She sat down, closed the door, and for a brief second, said nothing at all. Elias waited. Not impatient, not uncertain, just present. "Downtown," she said finally, but her voice had softened again, as if the word no longer needed to carry control. The car moved. The city dimmed into evening. At 7:42 p.m., the car slowed once more. Charlotte did not turn this time. She did not search for the reason. She already understood. Somewhere along the quiet rhythm of those pauses, something had changed. Not in him, in her. And for the first time, she did not feel the need to question why. Tuesday morning carried a different kind of quiet, the kind that settles after something has already changed but has not yet been named. Elias Carter arrived as he always did, 2 minutes early, engine running, presence steady, as if time itself adjusted to meet him there. The street was colder now, the air sharper, but nothing about his posture reflected discomfort. Inside the building, Charlotte Whitmore paused before stepping out, her hand resting briefly against the door handle longer than necessary. Not hesitation, just awareness. She stepped forward and walked toward the car with the same measured rhythm, but her gaze did not pass over it this time. It landed. It stayed. She opened the door and sat down without speaking. For a moment, neither of them moved. The engine hummed softly beneath them, waiting. "Midtown," she said, but the word felt lighter, less like a command and more like a direction shared. Elias nodded once and pulled into traffic. The city unfolded around them, but Charlotte did not look at her phone. She had not done that in days. Instead, she watched. Not everything. Just enough. A man adjusting his tie before crossing the street. A woman holding a paper bag carefully, as if it carried something fragile. A child tugging at a parent's sleeve, trying to say something that could not wait. The world had always been there. She had just never needed to see it. At 7:42 a.m., the car slowed. Same place. Same rhythm. But this time, Charlotte spoke before the car fully stopped. "What is her name?" she asked, her voice quiet, not intrusive, just present. Elias did not answer immediately. His hands remained steady on the wheel, his eyes forward. Then, almost without shifting anything else, he said, "Lila." The name rested in the air between them, simple and complete. Charlotte repeated it softly in her mind, not out loud, as if saying it too quickly might disturb something. Lila stepped into view, her backpack still slipping slightly off one shoulder, her pace unchanged. She paused at the curb, looked both ways, then glanced toward the car. This time, Charlotte saw it clearly. The recognition, not of a vehicle, of a person. Lila did not wave. She did not call out. She simply looked, as if confirming something she already trusted. Elias did not move. He did not speak. But something in the stillness of his presence answered her in a way words would have complicated. Lila crossed the street, steady and sure, and disappeared into the school building. Elias exhaled. The car moved forward. Charlotte leaned back slowly, her eyes still on the space where the girl had been moments before. "Does she know you are here every day?" she asked. Elias nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." Charlotte's fingers rested lightly against her lap, unmoving, her thoughts settling into something deeper than curiosity now. "Why do you not walk her in?" she asked after a moment, her tone careful, not judgmental, just seeking to understand. Elias paused, not long, just enough to choose the truth without dressing it in explanation. "Because she needs to walk in on her own," he said. Charlotte turned slightly, her gaze lingering on him, not trying to read him, just listening. He continued, his voice quiet, even. "But she also needs to know I am still here when she looks back." The words did not carry emotion in the way most people would deliver them. They carried something steadier, something earned. Charlotte looked out the window again, but the city did not feel distant anymore. It felt layered, filled with moments she had never stopped long enough to see. And for the first time in years, she did not feel ahead of everything. She felt present. By midweek, the pauses were no longer interruptions. They had become part of the rhythm, like a quiet note repeated in a song only a few people could hear. Charlotte Whitmore did not question them anymore. She expected them, not with impatience, not with curiosity, just awareness. Wednesday morning arrived clear and bright, sunlight cutting clean lines between buildings, reflecting off glass and steel in a way that made everything feel sharper, more defined. Elias Carter was already in position, as always, engine running, posture unchanged. Charlotte approached the car with the same measured steps, but there was no distance in her gaze now. She saw the car before she reached it. She opened the door and sat down without speaking. The silence settled, familiar now, no longer heavy. "Midtown," she said, but her voice carried something softer beneath it, something that did not need to control the space to fill it. Elias nodded and pulled into traffic. The city moved as it always did, but Charlotte watched differently now. She noticed how people waited, not just at crosswalks, but in moments. A man checking his watch for the third time. A woman staring at a bus that had not yet arrived. A child looking back at someone who stood just out of frame. Waiting meant something. It always had. She had just never stopped long enough to understand it. At 7:42 a.m., the car slowed. Same place. Same quiet stretch of curb. This time, Charlotte turned before the car stopped, her gaze already searching, already knowing what she would see. Lila stepped into view, her backpack adjusted higher on her shoulder today, her steps a little quicker, as if something about the morning had given her more energy. She paused at the curb, looked both ways, then glanced toward the car. This time, Charlotte saw more than recognition. She saw certainty. Lila did not need to check twice. She knew he was there. Elias remained still, hands on the wheel, eyes forward, but something in the stillness held meaning. Now, it was not absence. It was presence without demand. Lila crossed the street and disappeared into the school building. The car moved forward. Charlotte did not look away immediately. She followed the space where the girl had been, as if the moment left something behind that could not be seen but could still be felt. Later that morning, Charlotte made a decision without announcing it. At 7:40 a.m. the next day, she stepped out of the building 2 minutes earlier than usual. Not for efficiency, not for schedule, just to be there. Elias was already waiting. Of course he was. She entered the car and closed the door, her movements quiet, deliberate. She did not give a destination right away. Instead, she sat there, her eyes on the street ahead, the clock on the dashboard shifting slowly towards 7:42. When the minute arrived, Elias eased off the accelerator as he always did. But this time, Charlotte spoke before the car fully stopped. "You can pull a little closer today," she said, her voice calm, not commanding, just offering something different. Elias paused for a fraction of a second, then nodded once. He guided the car forward a few more feet, bringing it slightly closer to the curb where Lila would appear. Not a big change, just enough. Lila stepped into view moments later, her backpack slipping again, her pace steady. She paused, looked both ways, then toward the car. This time, her eyes lingered a fraction longer, noticing the difference, the closeness. Charlotte did not move. She did not speak. But something in her posture softened, just slightly, as if she understood that sometimes presence was not about being seen. It was about being there, exactly where it mattered, without needing anything in return. And for the first time, Charlotte Whitmore adjusted something in her world that had nothing to do with control and everything to do with understanding. Thursday arrived with a steady rain that softened the city into reflections and muted sound, each movement outside the car wrapped in a quiet layer of gray. Elias Carter was already there, windshield wipers moving in slow, consistent arcs, clearing just enough of the world ahead to keep everything visible. Charlotte Whitmore stepped out of the building and paused for a fraction of a second under the overhang, watching the rain fall in clean, vertical lines before walking toward the car. She entered without speaking, the door closing with that same soft certainty, sealing them once again into a space that no longer felt confined. "Midtown," she said, but her voice carried no urgency, no weight. Elias nodded and pulled into traffic, the tires rolling through shallow water, the city moving slower now, more deliberate. Inside the car, the silence returned, but it no longer asked to be filled. It held something. At 7:42 a.m., the car slowed. The familiar motion, the quiet shift. Charlotte was already looking. Lila stepped into view, holding a small umbrella that tilted slightly to one side, her backpack covered in a thin sheen of rain. She paused at the curb, adjusting her grip, then looked toward the car. This time, her eyes lingered longer. Not just recognition. Something softer. Something that looked like reassurance. Elias did not move. Charlotte did not speak. The moment unfolded with the same quiet precision, but the rain added something new, something almost intimate, as if the world had stepped back just enough to let this one moment exist on its own. Lila crossed the street carefully, each step measured against the slick pavement, and disappeared into the school entrance, shaking the water from her umbrella before stepping inside. Elias exhaled, and the car moved forward. Charlotte leaned back slowly, her fingers resting still, her gaze following the path Lila had taken until it disappeared from view. She did not turn away immediately. Instead, she let the moment settle, let it stay. Later that afternoon, the rain had not stopped. It had grown steadier, heavier, turning the city into a blur of movement and light. Charlotte stepped into the car without speaking, but this time, she did not give a destination. She sat there, her eyes on the windshield as the rain traced uneven paths across the glass. Elias waited, not impatient, not questioning, just present. After a moment, she spoke, her voice quieter than it had ever been. "Does she ever worry that you will not be there?" she asked. Elias did not answer right away. The wipers continued their steady rhythm, clearing, returning, clearing again. Then, without shifting his gaze, he said, "She used to." The words hung in the air, simple, but carrying something deeper beneath them. Charlotte's eyes softened slightly, her posture easing in a way she did not notice. "And now?" she asked. Elias paused, just long enough to let the truth settle before speaking it. "Now she looks back less often." Charlotte turned her head slightly, her gaze resting on him, not searching, not analyzing, just listening. Because she trusts you will be there, she said quietly. Elias nodded once. Yes, ma'am. Charlotte looked forward again, the rain still falling, the city still moving, but something inside her had shifted again, deeper this time. Not a realization, not a conclusion, just an understanding that did not need to be spoken. She reached for her phone, then stopped, her hand resting lightly against it before letting it go. Downtown, she said finally, but her voice carried something new. Not control, not distance, something closer to respect. Elias nodded and pulled into traffic. The car moved forward, steady, quiet, certain. And for the first time, Charlotte Whitmore did not feel like she was being driven somewhere. She felt like she was arriving. Friday morning arrived clear again, the rain gone, the streets washed clean as if the city had taken a breath overnight and decided to start again. Elias Carter was already there, as always, engine running, presence steady, the quiet rhythm of his routine untouched by weather or time. Charlotte Whitmore stepped out of the building and paused for just a moment, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to notice it. The air felt different. Or maybe she did. She walked toward the car without rushing, her heels softer against the pavement now, as if the sound no longer needed to announce her arrival. She opened the door and sat down, closing it gently behind her. For a brief second, neither of them spoke. The engine hummed, the clock on the dashboard shifting towards 7:42, the world outside already in motion. Midtown, she said, but her voice carried something that had not been there before. Not control, not distance, something quieter, something earned. Elias nodded once and pulled into traffic. The city unfolded as it always did, but Charlotte did not look at her phone. She had not done that in days. Instead, she watched, not searching, not analyzing, just present. At 7:42 a.m., the car slowed. The familiar motion, the quiet decision. This time, Charlotte spoke before the car came to a stop. You can wait a little longer today, she said, her voice calm, not instructing, just offering space. Elias glanced at the clock, then nodded once. The car came to a gentle stop. Lila stepped into view moments later, her backpack secure today, her pace steady, her eyes lifting toward the car almost immediately. She paused at the curb, then looked again, longer this time. Not checking, just seeing. Elias remained still. Charlotte remained silent. The moment stretched, not in tension, but in presence. Lila crossed the street, slower than usual, her steps unhurried, as if she understood something about time that most people had forgotten. Halfway across, she turned her head slightly, just enough to look back. Not fully, not dramatically, just enough. Elias did not wave. He did not move. But something in the stillness answered her. Lila continued across, reached the other side, then paused at the entrance. She turned again, this time fully, and lifted her hand in a small, simple wave. Not for long, just a second. Then she disappeared inside. Elias exhaled slowly. The car remained still for a moment longer. Charlotte watched the empty sidewalk, her fingers resting quietly against her lap, her thoughts no longer searching for meaning. She had already found it. You never told me why you stayed, she said softly, her voice steady, not demanding, just asking. Elias did not answer right away. The city moved around them, unaware, unchanged. Then, without turning, without shifting anything else, he said, because leaving was never an option. Charlotte nodded once, her gaze still forward, her posture calm. Not because of the job, she said quietly. Elias shook his head once. No, ma'am. The words settled between them, simple, complete. Charlotte leaned back slightly, her eyes closing for just a brief moment, not in exhaustion, but in understanding. When she opened them again, the city looked the same, but it felt different. Go ahead, she said gently. Elias pressed the accelerator. The car moved forward, smooth, steady, certain. And somewhere between the quiet pauses, the unspoken moments, and the things that were never explained, Charlotte Whitmore realized something she had not known she was missing. He never raised his voice. He never asked to be understood. But in the stillness of everything he chose not to